Well, hello and welcome. We're live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Thank you very much for tuning in. You are watching The Week Ahead with myself, Diesel Wilson. Interact with us on our social media platforms, including at The Week Ahead or using the hashtag The Week Ahead. Let's get straight into it for today. Right, so we start off the show by taking a look at some important news where power utility Eskom is expected to lower rolling blackouts to stage 3 as of Monday. Now, this comes after it ramped up rolling blackout stages to stage 6 just a week ago, costing the economy an estimated 4 billion rand a day. Now, despite the expectations of lowered stages, the utility says the capacity constraints will persist for a while. Meanwhile, according to reports by the Sunday Times publication, the Eskom board may be restructured this week following a cabinet meeting.
According to Eskom, this weekend's blackouts were used to replenish the pumped storage dam levels, which were utilized extensively over the past week. In its last update, it said it's experiencing constraints from its diesel suppliers that are affecting the availability of bulk diesel to the Ankelich and Gorikwa open-cycle gas turbines, which have a combined capacity of 2,000 megawatts. It warned that should these persist, higher stages of rolling blackouts may be required.
A further reduction to stage 3 will be implemented until 5 o'clock on Monday morning. The capacity constraints will persist throughout next week, and current indications are that load shedding will be implemented at stage 3 for most of next week.
Former President Thabo Mbeki has questioned why the energy crisis in the country is not being addressed effectively. He also added his voice to those asking if the answer doesn't lie in placing engineers and economists in the leadership of Eskom. Mbeki made the comments during his engagements with students and diplomats at the University of South Africa earlier in the week.
Why do we seem to be incapable as a country that is incapable of addressing this matter effectively? Is it the issue that Padile Hotla is raising? Let's put engineers and economists as the leadership of Eskom. Maybe that's the answer. But I'm saying it's going to come from the kind of leadership that we need.
AgriSA has called on government to declare the agriculture industry an essential service to ensure the country's farming operations and food supply chain are not being disrupted during rolling blackouts. The Agricultural Industry Association says it has approached Eskom for talks, warning that the current energy crisis may have implications for food security next year. At the same time, Business Unity South Africa warns that the economic damage of ongoing blackouts is severe, calling for an immediate intervention to deal with the crisis and to at least manage it better. BUSA says it has been urging government to urgently implement identified priority interventions. It says the second quarter's 0.7% decline in the economy was mostly caused by continued blackouts. It says government needs to move urgently to enable Eskom to purchase power from all available resources and to step up repairs to plants. It also wants the utility to fill vacancies on the Eskom board and to be more granular and detailed on exactly what is causing frequent load shedding. Diabosito, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, in other news, the Africa Aerospace and Defence Air Show has returned to the Air Force Base in Waterkloof in Pretoria after a 2-year hiatus. This was due to COVID-19. Now, the show comprises of a world-class air demonstration, mobility track demonstrations, parachute drops, aerobatic displays, and other static displays from some of the biggest names in the aviation and defense industry. Mbalenhle Mtetwa is standing by with an update. A very good afternoon to you, Mbalenhle. Thank you very much for joining us. Perhaps you can give us an update on what is currently transpiring on your end. What is the program looking like?
Well, what you are seeing is exactly what is on the program right now. You are seeing a display of force by the SANDF as well as the police services. These are choppers that have just flown across the skies here. Just a few moments ago, a display by the K9 unit as well as the South African Police Service had just concluded. And this is really the after aftermath of that very beautiful display. Now, you will know that this air show attracts a lot of people coming in to view the display of these aircrafts. Absolutely beautiful to watch and beautiful to see. I'm joined by one of the organizers who's going to speak to us. Well, they're going to be taking over as the core organizers of the show. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Talk to us about what people can expect going forward. We understand that this is the first time that the show is taking place since COVID. It seems there is a bit of criticism that it's a bit smaller than what people are used to. Talk to us about that.
Well, Mbali, if you remember, this is actually, as you say, rightfully so, that this is our first show after COVID. And indeed, we had viewed this as a re-emergent, really, and our industry was hard hit by COVID. So quite frankly, we had really anticipated what we have seen today exceeded our expectations. We did not expect such a big response, although it's quite smaller compared to the other events. But based on our own expectations, we have exceeded in terms of even our occupancy, in terms of our pavilions, in terms of our stand. But the interesting part is this is actually the first year ever that we have 9 national pavilions, whereas, in the history of AAD. So that has been quite a big feat for us. But the response from the public, especially looking at the 2 days that we've had, has been quite amazing for us. So, as I say, we have literally exceeded our own expectation in terms of our planning. Looking forward to 2024, as Armsco will be taking over as a lead partner, we can only do better than what you've seen here. Also, maybe I should mention that this is the first time that the SAPS, as you've seen, are actually participating in the AAD, so we can only move, beyond this. What we've also seen is a bit of an interest from our African counterparts, and they have indicated that come 2024, they'll be ready, they'll be gearing to actually showcase their own capability, and that is what you can expect to see in 2024 from Armsco as a lead partner.
So what I hear you saying is that the interest is picking up, and there are more people wanting to participate. You mentioned something about more 9 ADDs. Please explain that for the benefit of our viewers in layman's terms, really.
In an expo show, you would have national pavilions. So a country will come and bring forth their own exhibitors, but they would showcase as a nation. So we had we would have some, like the Brazilians would actually have their own national pavilion. So this year we've had 9 countries that came forth and showcased their capabilities, not only as individual companies, but as a country coming forth and saying, this is what we have, and this is what we can offer for the African Aerospace Defense exhibition. So that is what we're looking forward to have more countries coming forward to showcase their capabilities within the continent. And we're quite pleased as an organizer to have seen such a huge response, especially after COVID.
Okay, and what can people look forward to? I mean, what's going to be the main highlight of the day? I know that there is that fighter jet that's been grounded for 2 years. Is that something that people can look forward to?
Oh, definitely. I wouldn't want to ruin the surprise, but you can look forward to our Griffins flying and a beautiful, beautiful display. Those who were yesterday will tell you that it was amazing. At dawn, when the sun sets and you see this beautiful display coming through. But we also have, our own capabilities within the South African National Defence Force, and of course, some of the companies that are showcasing their technologies as well. But yes, I've seen that with the kids, especially the fighter jet is quite popular, but we've also have the Silver Falcons, who are, of course, the acrobatic, flight team. We've also had, I think yesterday, the Iveco team, I remember, and that was also very popular because they were doing these beautiful acrobatic stunts that the kids absolutely went crazy about. So that is what you can look forward to for today in terms of our display.
So, just speaking about the SANDF, we've spoken to an analyst who says that, it seems as though while the SANDF has come out and shown they in full force, really, it seems as though there are budgetary issues in terms of, getting more vehicles or new or not vehicles, but new equipment and new airplanes. Do you know anything about that? And is Armco involved in with regards to that?
My response to that would be, that we can only succeed if as an industry we come together. And that is really what this type of exhibition would actually, help us to garner all the capabilities within the country to help our own defense force to be able to, be fully resourced in terms of, the technology needs, but also be able to be fully resourced in terms of, whatever they may need to be able to protect our own sovereignty. So, a show like this is actually quite important because we get to see what we have within the country as an industry, but we also can see, those other countries to whom we can then, partner with and be able to assist and, help our industry to rise, and be able to stand toe to toe with other Western countries.
Speaking of Western countries, I know the US also has a display here. Would you say it's the most popular of the displays? Which one is popular with the people who have come here?
I think it's maybe the size of the aircraft. Everybody wants to see what's in there, but I don't think we can really say. I think you go to every stall, you go to every pavilion, there's quite a group of people around that. But I think it's because they have the band, so people can dance while they wait. Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. There you have it. One of the organizers from Arms Corps was going to be taking over from this as the lead organizer in the next coming years. As you can see, people are here and they've come out in numbers to see this display of aircrafts flying over Pretoria skies. For now, it's back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Mbalenhle, for that update. Mbalenhle giving us an update on what's happening as the Africa Aerospace and Defence Air Show is currently taking place in the Waterkloof area where the Air Force Base is. That's in the Pretoria region. This as it's obviously suffered due to post-COVID-19 pandemic, which caused a 2-year hiatus. But it's great to see everyone back in action again. Thank you to Mbalenhle for that update. In other news for the week ahead, the Reserve Bank has revised down its growth forecast for the country, with economic growth now expected to reach 1.9% from 2% this year. This comes after the bank's Monetary Policy Committee announced a 75 basis points repo rate increase, taking the repurchase rate to 6.25% and the bank's prime lending rate to 9.75%. To help us make sense of these numbers and perhaps also what we can expect, Fazana Buerta, Segment Solutions Manager at Sanlam, joins us to discuss how this increase will ultimately be affecting South Africans. A very good afternoon to you, Fazana. Thank you for joining us on the SABC.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
Let's look at how the Reserve Bank has revised down its growth forecast for the country. And in layman's terms, what does this mean for South Africa at this juncture?
So practically for the consumer, what has happened is that if they have any debt, the rate at which they are servicing their debt has now increased. So you can expect to pay an additional 75 cents for every 100 Rand that you're indebted for. Now, it might sound small, but considering this is the 6th consecutive interest rate hike, you can imagine the compound effect on this for the consumer has been quite severe. So people who have been budgeting quite tightly and quite closely, they're finding that their budget is stretching as a result of this interest rate hike.
Fazana,
also with the,
sure,
sorry,
go ahead. No. Do complete your point.
No, I was just saying, so that also will slow down spending, which as a result will also then slow down the economic growth that we will experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the ripple effects. And so in lieu of this, I mean, should consumers who are currently feeling stretched financially be worried at this point?
So we've recently done a survey with consumers to find how is this financial stresses impacting their mental health. And we found that a majority, I think it was just over 60% of South Africans are experiencing a high level of anxiety as a result. And even though we had some kind of foresight, knowing that this was coming, because they're struggling to make it work for them in a personal capacity and they don't have partners and financial planners to help them on the journey, the stress is even more significant. So yes, it is concerning. However, there are ways in which you can prepare yourself and scale yourself to build the resilience to be able to navigate these things when they happen.
So then going ahead, are the interest rates likely to go up even further? I'm asking this because there are obviously also macro dynamics that are unfolding. The Northern Hemisphere countries are now going to be entering winters. There's also the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, which doesn't seem to be coming to an end. So with these factors, contributing factors, What's the likelihood of more increases?
Yeah, so in my opinion, and based on what we understand in the industry, we can expect further interest rate hikes. The idea was to bring it to normalization because last year and the year before we had significantly lower interest rate hikes. And we also saw that inflation was rising quite rapidly. So these measures are in place to try and manage the effect of inflation on the consumer. So we will potentially see further interest rate hikes. And as I said earlier, the consumers are aware, so we need to really build that resilience in order to manage it. Because we exist in a system, everything that happens on a macroeconomic scale will impact us here in South Africa, and we just need to form better patterns and habits in order to manage that when it does.
So speaking of those patterns and habits, just very quickly, for businesses, especially small businesses, even consumers, how do we begin to mitigate against the knock-on effects? What are some of those skills to manage given the time frame and what we're experiencing at this juncture?
Well, back to that survey, one of the things we found is that 68% of South Africans have created a budget, but only 17% of them are able to stick to that budget. So unfortunately, and many people seem to think that a budget is almost like a sort of punishment, but it's actually an enabler, it's a tool. So the thing is, you need to try and hold yourself as strictly as possible to those budgets and see how you can manage that in order to free up a bit of capital to service your debt as aggressively as possible, which will allow you to have some spare capital in the future to capitalize on markets when the interest rate increases, because there are investment opportunities in this environment. Unfortunately, when consumers are heavily indebted, they're not able to partake in those other opportunities.
So perhaps for those who want to, look at those investment opportunities, what does it then look like as you perhaps look at the cup half full rather than half empty?
Yeah, so they could, obviously there's lots of tools and resources available to them, even through ourselves at Sanlam on the Sanlam website, and they can look at potentially a money market type of fund where as interest rate hikes, the rate that you will return on that particular type of investment will gradually increase as well. And it allows a certain level of accessibility. So you could use it as potentially an emergency fund when you need capital. But because I can't actually give advice, what we can do is that consumers can look on their website and ask to speak to a financial advisor who's poised and educated enough to help them in their very particular situations and find the solutions that are relevant to them.
Fazana, thank you very much for joining us on the SABC. We'll leave the conversation there. Fazana Botha, Segment Solutions Manager at Sanlam, talking about the Reserve Bank having revised down its growth forecast for the country and really just explaining what the impact this is going to have on consumers and businesses alike. Again, thank you very much to her for her time. Let's leave it there. We are going to take a quick ad break. There is more on the other side as COSATU will tomorrow be holding its 14th National Congress at Gallagher Stadium in Midrand. We'll be right back. Right, welcome back. We continue with more news now as the week ahead continues. COSATU will from tomorrow until Thursday hold its 14th National Congress at the Gallagher Stadium in Midrand. The Congress will convene under the theme Build Working Class Unity for Economic Liberation Towards Socialism. Perhaps for this and more, joining us for discussion on this is Dr. Levi Ndau, political analyst. A very good afternoon to you, Dr. Levi. Thank you for joining us on the SABC.
Good afternoon to you, Lizen. Good afternoon to the viewers at home. Thank you for having me.
Let's get straight into the conversation. I think as we look at the relevance of what is transpiring, given what's happening from as of Monday until Thursday, what would you say is the relevance of trade unions in today's society, just given some of the socio-economic challenges that we face as a country?
Well, I think workers' federations and unions remains very relevant in South Africa even today. The workers in South Africa and elsewhere still face the challenges of exploitation, the challenges of working long hours, the challenges of receiving very legal salaries, the challenges that relates to the relationship between them and the employers, the challenges that relates to leave days and many other rights associated with workers. You have a situation where ordinary workers would not know about their rights at the workplace, and you need to have unions or union leaders to be able to educate these people about their rights, what they should do and what they should not do. Equally, you need unions that are progressive, unions that will not discourage workers who are doing well, unions who will make sure that workers are actually doing what they are employed to do. You need unions that get worried when their members are actually not delivering as expected. If you take it to local government or any other sphere of government, you need unions that must encourage workers to be responsive to service delivery issues. When communities are angry that there is no proper services that they are receiving, it should be a worrying factor to unions that their members are letting society down and they're letting the unions down, because these are the people that are at the forefront of service delivery. When we have at municipal level citizens complaining about poor services, you need unions who must go back to their workers and say, we are being pointed at, and the blame should come to us as unions that our workers are actually not performing as expected. That should be the role of unions and their impact in society.
Dr. Lev, on the back of that, you've spoken about the importance of workers understanding their rights, as well as unions allowing their members to be progressive. You've also now spoken about the issue of service delivery and performance at large. The 14th National Congress of COSATU comes at a time where the unemployment rate is extremely high. And I wonder, can the Congress come up with tangible solutions given, the state of the country at this point?
I think the unions have got a very important role to play in the development of the country and also in shaping the direction that the country is supposed to take. Unions in South Africa, especially COSATU, that is in alliance with the ruling party, the ANC and the ACCP. In my view, you need to have COSATU that is able to take resolutions at its conference that should fit within the programs of the ruling party and, of course, those of government. You need COSATU that is progressive, that must say, our role as workers in South Africa is developmental, and we must provide government with people or members who are service-driven, who are supposed to do or work in the interest of both the union and South Africans. And that is why my argument would be that we no longer need unions that will always be focusing on negative things only. Yes, of course, there are instances where unions will always be worrying and be at loggerheads with the employers. But when there is no time, or at a time when they are not fighting or arguing, you need to see a union saying, this is the role that we're supposed to play in society, and people should see a union member wearing a uniform with pride, that when we see these people, we see service that we have to receive as ordinary citizens.
So in their preparation statement, then COSATU says it will be spending the next 4 days allocated to the Congress to deal, with the effects of a stagnant economy, the nature of work, and also the need to invest in skill set of the future. We're looking at the trajectory of the world. There's the fourth industrial revolution that is taking place. And obviously just so that people can not only find work for today, but also, prepare themselves for the future. And is 4 days enough to deliberate on such complex issues? I'm just looking at the issue of skill set alone. The theme is about building working class unity for economic liberation towards socialism, which speaks to, ideology. And I wonder in this capitalist society how possible that is.
Well, 4 days would be enough for a national conference to discuss these issues. Remember, these are issues that have been discussed already at branch level, at regions, and with a number of interactions that takes place amongst members of the party. These are discussions that are actually ongoing. What they need to do now at conference in the next 4 days is to sit down and then consolidate what has been discussed long time ago at different levels. And what they must do after this conference is to come with a clear program of action on how they're actually going to respond going forward in ensuring that what they actually agreed upon has to be implemented. Equally, trade unions are also politicized, and their existence is actually based on an ideology. They need to see society moving towards a particular direction. There is always an emphasis of a socialist approach, the left idealism that you always hear from the workers. And now that we have got a lot of capitalist tendencies, that is where you are then able to get workers bringing in their own socialist and leftist expression. Because in the view of the workers, their main enemy is capitalism, and they would always try their best in whatever they do to challenge the status quo and want society to move towards a socialist system. That is a fight that workers have been engaged in for a very, very long time, supported by communists and other sectors of society, because they feel that through capitalism, exploitation and sufferings continue, and that is why in their own minds, they would want to see the nation moving more towards a socialist system in which they feel that they are going to be much in control and they'll be in charge of the means of production.
Well, there's lots coming through and will be coming through as of Monday. Again, as COSATU will be hosting, its National Congress, the 14th edition at the Gallagher Estate in Midrand. We'll leave that conversation there with you, Dr. Levi. Take a quick ad break. On the other side, obviously, you're going to be back because we're going to be chatting about COGTA, also be hosting a 2-day summit starting on the 27th and 28th of September. So we'll be right back. Do stay tuned. Right, welcome back. The week ahead continues. We return to our conversation with Dr. Levi Ndaba, political analyst, to discuss and perhaps turn our focus to the Ministry of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, as it will also be hosting a 2-day summit. And this is in keeping with the constitutional mandate. Dr. Levi, thank you for joining us once again. As we shift our focus now, I wonder if you could just speak to the state of municipalities currently, and what are some of the more worrying concerns displayed as we lead into the elections come 2024?
Well, in South Africa, we have got different models of our own municipalities. Our metros, our districts and of course local government. What appears to be a challenge with our municipalities are the obvious and the usual issues that relates to, in the main, revenue collection, issues that will then relate, which is linked to the actual service delivery. When municipalities are not able to collect revenue adequately, it has the potential to affect how they actually provide the same services, because they actually need financial resources. And some of this has to come from the people themselves. But another very big challenge that is faced by municipalities in South Africa, it's a matter relating to capacity. Capacity at an administrative level and capacity at political level. There are reports that are quite worrying that were presented by government just before the local government elections. And some also came now after the 2021 local government elections, that we have got a lot of councillors who are illiterate. And that then talks to the level of or the kind of people that are supposed to be serving the people on the ground. If they cannot read and write, it therefore means that the work of the municipality or their work has the potential to be negatively affected. There has been a report that spoke to some councillors having come forward, and I'm happy that they were courageous now to say we need to be capacitated so that we are able to go through reports, so that we are able to make presentations, because that is one area that is worrying. But there has been a general issue that relates to service delivery. And this summit must then be able to say, we need to be able to build capacity in our municipalities so that everyone or every community is able to feel the existence of local government. And we have got a lot of areas that do not feel the existence of local government because they don't see anything that is actually coming. So the summit must then be able to identify all the challenges that are there in local government and then be able to come with a plan on what is it that they're supposed to do best in order to make a difference in people's lives.
So let's look at that plan and what could be feasible at this point. How can municipalities play a role in the economic development of South Africa, where, I mean, from the summit, one of the key factors is to emerge is about ensuring there's a collective program of action to enable this ideal municipality, you know, that can strategically demonstrate in the pursuit of long-term development. Practically, what does that look like? How so?
My view is that government has to encourage municipalities to start with the basics. And the basics will be to develop clear plans for municipalities, which are obviously in line with what government intends achieving. The challenge we have in South Africa is that South Africa, dynamic as it is, challenges facing municipality A might not be the challenges facing municipality B. So at a local level, municipalities themselves should be able to develop their own plans, having identified their challenges, develop their own plans, then make sure that there is a budget, and then come up with a short, medium, and long-term goal in terms of how then they can be able to deal with the immediate challenges that they actually face. Yes, of course, there are general plans that can then be developed at national level. Local government must then be able to say, how do we then fit into the general plan of local government, so that as a municipality, we should actually be relevant. But more importantly, municipalities should always be seen as responsive to the day-to-day challenges that ordinary people face, especially on matters relating to the provisioning of basics. Municipalities must be able to be the champions of ensuring that basics are actually being supported. So this summit must capacitate municipalities, must capacitate administrators in ensuring that indeed they are able to deliver and live towards ensuring that their responsibilities are actually being met.
So, Dr. Levi, on the back of that, when we're bringing the idea of the district development model, it looks at the theme, in fact, which says the district development model in action towards an ideal municipality. Does this then speak to the ordinary citizen at large? Is this going to effectively help service delivery?
It does. It talks to the cooperative or cooperative governance in South Africa. It talks to mainstreaming the responsibilities of local government so that across the line, all those that are serving local government are able to know and understand the mandates that they actually have. It also talks to ethical leadership at local government, but in the main, focusing on the developmental agenda that the local government is supposed to be doing. So it requires a mainstream and a proper framework on how these people are supposed to fit in and ensure that the work is actually delivered as expected. But more important, it will still require the change of mindset, especially from those that are given responsibilities to run government, that municipalities in South Africa are supposed to be results-oriented. Everybody who is serving in the municipality should actually be knowing that on a regular basis, there are certain things that I'm supposed to mark and say, we've been able to achieve this one, we've been able to achieve this one, because it's supposed to be results-oriented. What we need to get from those that are elected to serve in local government is that as they get out of office after 5 years, they should be able to point at certain areas and say, these are the areas that we'll be able to achieve in the 5-year term period that was given to us.
Well, Dr. Levi, thank you very much for joining us here on the SABC ahead of COGTA convening its local government summit that's set to take place this week as well. We'll leave the conversation there. Take a quick ad break. There will be more news and updates on the other side when we return. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. The week ahead continues with myself, Liesl Wilson. In other news now, Free State Premier Sisi Ntombela says that construction of new houses in Jagersfontein will start tomorrow. The Premier was speaking at the funeral of Raliana Aaron Musweu, who is so far the only reported fatality following the mine dam collapse in Jagersfontein.
Raliana Aaron Musweu, who perished when the mine dam in Jagersfontein collapsed 2 Sundays ago, has been described as an honorable and dignified member of the community. The mine dam collapsed and flooded parts of Charlesville and Itumeleng, leaving in its trail destruction to houses and infrastructure. Speakers at the 78-year-old's funeral service told mourners that he was a reliable community member.
He's a social man. I like the social part of it. He's a social man and he's a reliable man. If he promises you that this is what I'm going to do for you, then he does it. He lives up to his promises.
The provincial government says it's troubled by the 2 people who are still missing.
We're still worried about the 2 that have not been found, Mema Mkhadi, Lintate Williams. So we'll be having a night vigil on Thursday from 6 o'clock, so that we're just going to pray, just try to find where is Lintate Williams and Mema Mkhadi.
Ntombela says the province wants to fast-track the building of houses for more than 300 displaced residents. She says about 160 houses will be built.
In fact, we know now we have 160 people that don't have houses at all. So we want to fast-track the process. At least we are planning by December, all those people must have their houses. So by Monday, we are going to start building with a sample of the houses that we want to build.
Ntombela says if the 2 missing people are not found by Thursday, they will hold a candlelight service to pray that they are found. Kamogelo Siekwi, SABC News, Jacques.
Well, there are calls for another language to be added to South Africa's national anthem. The Nama language activists are lobbying that the ancient indigenous language also forms part of the anthem. They've already translated the anthem and sing it at various cultural events. Senior reporter Ulrich Hendricks filed this report.
You are familiar with this one. The national anthem featuring 5 languages: isiXhosa, isiZulu, Sesotho, Afrikaans and English. But you might not have heard this one before. The prayer that is the South African anthem in one of its ancient languages, Nama.
When I sing the national anthem in Nama, I feel very proud. I feel appreciated. I feel like a VIP when I sing the national anthem in Nama.
The government has now given us the privilege of recognition, and that is very important to us, that language can be incorporated in the anthem, so that we too feel we get recognition. And while they are belting out the lyrics full steam, there's still a need to fine-tune the lyrics before it's considered as part of the national anthem. The government can help in the sense that they can roll out a program to get in touch with Nama communities and then ensure that the Nama communities help to get the right words that can be incorporated into the anthem. Nama in South Africa has been on the brink of extinction for decades, but there are efforts to revive it. 2 schools are currently offering Nama as extracurricular subjects, while efforts are on the way to get it as part of the normal curriculum. It's hoped efforts like getting it to be part of the national anthem will speed up that process. Ulrich Hendricks, SABC News, Gravis, Northern Cape.
The inaugural George Heritage Festival is being held this weekend in the Western Cape. It is a celebration of culture, heritage, food and entertainment galore.
South Africans celebrating their diversity through food, art and a variety of performances. From Boere music to local jazz, indigenous music and hip-hop.
We have put together a cast of various genres, various cultures, so that we can put on a display of the diversity in South Africa. But at the same time, create a celebration where we acknowledge each other and celebrate each other in our diversity, in our different cultures and traditions. And we have one platform because we have a shared heritage that we can be proud of, and that is something worth celebrating with the Heritage Festival.
The festival is one of the biggest of its kind held in the region so far.
For this kind of event, this size of event, where we have over 40 artists over the next 3 days, where we have about 30 or so stallholders and quite a number of sponsors that are supporting us. It is one of the bigger ones that the area has seen, yes.
We've got a live stage from 12 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon right through till 10:30 in the evening. And there will be literally artists back to back. Every hour on the hour there will be artists doing their thing on stage. Different artists, DJs, and also lots of activities. For instance, the real dancers will be here, gumboot dancing will be here, a real heritage festival for everybody to enjoy.
I like your music. I'm a reggae man, you see, man. And also play the reggae all the time, because it's my vibes. That's why I'm here.
This is actually my first heritage concert or something I've been to. And so far my experience is very nice.
I'm from East London. I am absolutely loving this vibe, loving the music, loving this festival, and definitely definitely worth driving 11 hours to get here.
It's hoped the festival will grow into an annual highlight on the region's social calendar. Tanya Krause, SABC News, George in the Western Cape.
Well, South Africa, with the largest population of rhinos in the world, remains a key player in the conservation of the species despite the increasing threat of poaching. Between 2018 and 2021, about 2,700 rhino poaching incidences were recorded in South Africa, well, across Africa rather. 90% of these took place in South Africa. The continued fight against rhino poaching was the focus of a webinar held by the Wildlife Justice Commission and the Worldwide Fund for Nature in South Africa.
Last year, 451 rhinos were killed for their horns in South Africa. And alarmingly, in the first 2 months of this year, there were already 259 rhinos poached, more than half of last year's total. With Africa's rhino numbers falling, the pressure is on South Africa to intensify efforts to manage the survival of the critical species, with poaching fast on the increase post the COVID lockdown.
It remains critical to actively grow rhino numbers to offset losses, and range expansion projects are an important tool. The report shows that dedicated wildlife crime task teams, which bring together skills across agencies, such as the Blue Rhino in Namibia, the Apoc in Mozambique, and the Environmental Enforcement Fusion Centre in South Africa, amongst others, have shown successes in apprehensions, prosecutions, and convictions. But as with all organised crime, corruption remains a significant threat, and it's important to invest in rangers to ensure their resilience through good leadership and building strong team morale and cohesion.
Black rhinos remain critically endangered, but in the last 3 years, their numbers have shown a slight increase of 3% per year, while white rhinos have declined by 3.1% in the same period.
Concerningly, there was a decline of 3.1% in the continental population year on year, and an 11.8% decline overall. The northern white rhino, Ceratotherium simcottoni, is functionally extinct, with only 2 known females remaining on the Olpejita Conservancy in Kenya, which was a reduction from the 3 animals recorded in 2017. Southern white rhinos, or Ceratotherium simum, are the most numerous remaining rhino subspecies, and their IUCN Red List status remains near threatened. They famously recovered from very low numbers in Shishlui-Umfolozi Park in KwaZulu-Natal from the late 1800s.
The Wildlife Justice Commission has been analysing the criminal dynamics driving rhino horn trafficking, using data collected from national governments from the end of 2021. This led to the Commission calling for poaching to be recognised as a transnational crime and not simply as a conservation issue.
Our analysis found that rhino horn is most often smuggled with no concealment at all. So around 1/3 of horns that were seized in the last 10 years indicate that there was no attempt to hide the presence of the contraband in the shipment. And so we do feel that this could indicate that traffickers are more reliant on corrupt elements to move rhino horn shipments through that supply chain, and that those actors can provide sufficient guarantee of safe passage.
The full report will be released ahead of the 19th Conference of the Parties to CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, in Panama in November. Minoshni Pillay, SABC News, Durban.
Well, in other news now, Africa's first ratings agency was launched, Sovereign Africa Ratings, which has been informed by a number of South African professionals of various disciplines, says it's going to differentiate itself from established international ratings agencies by better using local knowledge and data of the markets that they cover. In its first unsolicited review, SAR has rated the South African sovereign investment grade and its outlook as stable. This rating is unlike the 3 major ratings agencies, which have South Africa at junk status.
Ratings agencies play a critical role in financial markets. They provide high-level economic and market intelligence reports which investors heavily rely on to make investment decisions, be that in a company or a country. S&P Global, Moody's and Fitch currently dominate 95% of the global market, with their conclusions remaining dominant in how investors perceive the African continent. The new kid on the block, Sovereign Africa Ratings, says they're going to do things differently.
We're differentiating ourselves on the basis of the weights that are ascribed to different variables that are used in arriving at a rating. If you look at what they do, they assign certain types of weights, for instance, based on interviews that are carried out with, for instance, business people. Some of the judgments may be slightly more subjective than objective. So we try as an agency to ensure that at all times we rely on hard, quantifiable evidence and less so on subjective elements.
SAR says in their methodology they look at a minimum of 82 variables, which include economic factors, as well as the country's wealth and natural resource endowment, while also looking at how the given economy is structured and any other nuances that may be peculiar to it. As a new entrant, it's setting itself targets to become a sustainable business.
Yes, when we do the solicited ratings, we will obviously engage at a fee, and when the rated entities pay us for our services, we've set ourselves a target of about 3 years, during which we want to build our reputation by exposing the objectivity of our quantitative method, and after that we will be doing a lot of marketing to try and attract revenue from the entities that will be rated.
It's a tall order to try and get in on an area where the incumbents are so dominant, but SAR says they believe their more objective approach will hold them in good stead. They say they're tooled with the necessary expertise, which includes raters, analysts, statisticians, economic modelers and developers. Professor Stephen Friedman welcomed the launch of a new rating agency on the continent. He says there was a desperate need for a new perspective, not necessarily painting a sunshine picture, but being more balanced in their assessment approach. However, he warned SAR that established and powerful voices would belittle their endeavour, and added that the dominant global players in the market have come to assume that it is only them that are suitably qualified to rate countries for investors.
The idea that any group of human beings, and the people in the rating agency are human beings despite a lot of evidence to the contrary, any group of human beings who arrives in a particular situation to assess things brings baggage, okay? What is important, what is not important, it comes from your cultural background, it comes from your upbringing, etc. And therefore, the already hardwired prejudices with which people view a situation in Africa then gets reinforced by the locals. And here, in this country, of course, it's local business people who have these perspectives.
Despite the expected challenges ahead in making a dent in the market intelligence sector, the SAR team says it's determined to make its objective mark, especially on the African continent. Nompumelelo Siziba, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on the Heritage edition of the week ahead, as well as the week in review. Of course, we are back next week for more. From myself, Liesl Wilson and the team. Until then, it's goodbye for now.